What price are you willing to pay for cheating? Andrew and Courtney Simpson, though childless, had been happily married for 10 years. They both wanted to have children, but waited until they had careers and could financially support their family on one income. They were both in their 30s and were successful lawyers. Drew practiced litigation and Court practiced contract law at a prominent local firm in their hometown. Eventually, they had achieved such a level of financial stability that they had agreed to attend their first national convention of the American Bar Association. It was something they had both been looking forward to for a long time. During the long drive to the headquarters hotel where they had booked a room for the event, their main conversation was about starting a family. They both agreed that the time was right, but Court admitted she was wary of the prospect. It was at the collegiate reception on Wednesday night that things took a turn for the worse. It had started well enough. They had both enjoyed the atmosphere and socializing with fellow barristers. A barrister is a category of barrister in the UK and Commonwealth. It was later, when the formal part of the reception was over and everyone was drinking, dancing, and talking loudly, that Drew noticed that Court was in a playful mood. That was definitely not a bad trait, because it always led to marathon sex at the end of the evening. Courtney was a beautiful woman with a lively personality, albeit somewhat quirky, and was always flirtatious. Tonight was no exception. Drew, on the other hand, was more quiet and reserved. This was very unusual for a trial lawyer. They are usually very outgoing, to the point of obnoxiousness. At social gatherings, Drew was usually relegated to the background. However, he enjoyed watching people and their interactions. If a stranger started a conversation, Drew immediately became an active participant in it. He rarely struck up conversations with strangers himself. While his wife ordered her fourth mojito of the evening, Drew ran his hand down the inside of her stockinged thigh and moved closer to her body, feeling her heat on his fingers. He had spent far too much time on the dance floor with numerous partners that evening and was looking forward to returning to their room. When Drew finally got to her body, he realized that she was no longer wearing the black thong she had been wearing when they got dressed together. His eyes lit up as he met his gaze with his wife's dark green eyes. There was a smoky, sexy look in her eyes, and he was ready to have sex with her right here in the club. She leaned forward, showing off her hips and large breasts. She let out a low, appreciative mumble and purred, "I want to have fun tonight, honey," without breaking eye contact. "I see. I want that too, baby. Let's go to the room." "Look around, Drew, honey. We've never been in this town before. Do you see anyone we know back home?" Drew looked around reflexively. "No, I don't think so. Why?" "Tonight I want to have some fun." It was impossible not to notice the heavy emphasis on the I. He was stunned. He knew without a doubt what she meant. But although he was deeply shocked and badly hurt, as a practicing trial lawyer, he knew instinctively that he should not show his true emotions. In criminal cases, lawyers like to think they matter more than they really do. In most cases, juries pay attention to the evidence rather than the attorneys, but in tort law, things are much more subjective. Juries tend to get bored, the evidence presented is more tedious and subject to interpretation, or they are so complex that they are barely comprehensible even to the attorney presenting the arguments, so the jury is much more attentive to the presentation of the case, and the last thing any tort lawyer wants is for the jury to feel that he or she is shocked or even slightly surprised. That can make a huge difference in the resolution of the matter, if not the verdict. Drew couldn't understand where this was coming from. The only thing he could point to as a possible warning sign was his wife's reluctance to start a family. However, along the way, she had agreed to do just that. "I see, but what about our relationship?" She ignored his question. She wasn't a trial lawyer, but she knew how to question witnesses and knew not to let her opponent divert her attention. She sighed and still clutched his hand tightly on her body. "Have I been a good wife? In our 15 years together, did you ever once have any doubts about my love and total devotion to you? Since we became exclusive freshman year, name one incident One incident, one incident. I know I flirt, but have you ever doubted me even though you've seen me do it? You'd think she'd made the easiest rookie mistake a lawyer can make, asking a question she didn't yet know the answer to, but it really wasn't, because she knew the answer. No, she didn't. I never doubted your commitment to our relationship until 30 seconds ago. Why now? He had accepted the inevitable. It was amazing how quiet it was in the middle of a nightclub with flashing lights, loud music pounding in his chest, a DJ yelling about everything, and over 200 intoxicated lawyers. They spoke in a normal voice, but didn't miss a single syllable from each other's mouths. I've already told you I'm ready to start our family. I just want this weekend to be for me. I deserve it. And on Monday, I'm going to throw away my birth control pills and be committed to our future. She pushed his hand away, leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms, further emphasizing her ample cleavage and letting him know that the conversation was over, she thought. I see. Have you chosen someone yet? He, too, already knew the answer to his question. Yes. She answered quietly, but firmly. Okay, let me ask one more question. What's the compensation you're willing to pay? Compensation? Don't play dumb, you're a contract lawyer. You know what compensation is. What are you offering me as compensation? What price are you willing to pay? He was close to losing control of himself. He had no idea how quickly his life was falling apart. Honey, the only price is your ego. I know I'll hurt you by doing this, and I'll spend the next 30 years making that pain go away. This has nothing to do with what we have. It's Wednesday night, and we don't have to check out of the hotel until Saturday morning. I'll be back in our room Friday night, and we'll start practicing making babies. It's going to be okay. It was over. 15 years together, 10 years of marriage, our family that would never be born, no children's parties, birthdays, first days of school, graduation parties, brides-to-be or grandchildren bouncing on our laps. She just admitted to deliberately hurting her husband. Deliberate torture, if you will, and she didn't even blink. For some reason, it didn't matter to her. Okay, I'm going to bed. I guess I'll see you when I see you. He turned and walked away without looking back. He heard her calling for him, but he didn't care what she said anymore. Well, that went better than I expected, Courtney thought to herself smugly. What was that? I'll see you when I see you comment? She didn't hesitate and turned her attention to her intended target. She made eye contact. She didn't remember his name, but she remembered his dignity resting against her thigh as they danced the dance. The incredible truth was that until the very moment she'd felt this man on her leg, she'd never once considered being unfaithful to Drew. She had made a life-changing decision, but she had no idea about it. Drew didn't know how he managed to get back to the room. He vaguely remembered someone asking him if he was okay while he was riding in the elevator, but his mind was reeling, and he was still in a state of mild shock from what had happened. It all seemed so surreal to him. One minute, he was fantasizing about the great sex he and Court would have, and the next minute, his marriage was over. He didn't know how long he sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall, but eventually a plan formed in his head. He knew what he had to do and forced himself to go forward. It was only a 3.5-hour drive home, but Drew knew he had a couple days to get everything done. He realized that for Courtney, he didn't exist for the next 48 hours. That was enough time to do what needed to be done. He realized that the first thing in the morning was to report the theft of their joint credit cards. With any luck, some hotel maid would find Court's purse she'd left in the room and take it without reporting it. Drew had no intention of touching the items his soon-to-be ex-wife had left in the room. He also figured that if the maid took her purse, it would at least give him until the end of Monday to leave. The divorce itself would be simple and clean. They lived in a no-fault state. No kids, no house, no joint assets. They always kept their finances separate and contributed equally to expenses. They made roughly the same amount of money, so the divorce was the easy part. The hard part was starting over. Drew quickly packed his suitcase and was ready to head out the door. He paused for a moment, wondering if he should leave her a note, but then decided against it, stepped out into the hallway, and headed for the elevator. The sound of the automatic door closing the room door echoed down the hallway, signaling that he had closed the door to his previous life. A thought occurred to him on his way to the lobby, and he stopped at the front desk to check out. "My wife is picking up the car. We have an emergency at home and need to check out right away. We left our keys in the room." He saw the office clerk press a couple of keys and realized the cards were inactive. Stepping outside, he smiled slightly, knowing how much trouble Court would be in a couple days. 7 years later. Drew sat in the hotel restaurant sipping iced tea, waiting for his food to arrive so he could rush to the seminar. He did find the seminar interesting, and it was going to be a valuable experience that would help him in his family law practice. He noticed that the newspaper left by someone on the worn vinyl seat of the booth had a date on it, almost 7 years since the day his divorce was final. Wow. Time had flown by. He didn't realize he'd said it out loud at first and, slightly embarrassed, looked around to see if anyone had heard him. It had been a long time since he'd thought of Court. Although his divorce had been relatively straightforward, he realized how unfair the so-called no-fault system could be to the injured party. Frankly, this system existed because some people can't handle their own garbage, they act like children, try to hurt the other party, and the system has to step in and solve everything for them. These were the cases where the old axiom, "No one wins in divorce," is actually true. In any case, this was the impetus for Drew to change his specialization to family law. As he found out, most divorces these days happen simply because both parties give up. There were few arguments, and both parties were eager to end the situation as quickly and painlessly as possible. He took on any case that was presented to him, just as you take on your clients when they walk in the door. However, he loved dealing with the relatively rare cases where infidelity was involved, and he suspected that his client's spouse was trying to put the screws to his client. His musings were abruptly interrupted by a voice he still recognized. "Hey, Drew! How are you doing?" He popped his head up, and surprisingly, there she was standing in front of him. He couldn't have been more shocked if he'd been hit with a cattle prod. "Hey, Court. Believe it or not, I was just thinking about you. What are you doing at the family law conference?" "I'm not at the conference. I'm here on another case. May I sit down?" "Sure. Sorry." He gestured with his hand for her to sit down. "I'm really stunned to see you, so forgive my manners." Wow. I don't even know what to say. She sat up straight and spoke in an angry tone. "You didn't even talk to me, Drew. You haven't responded to any of my attempts to contact you. You haven't said a word to any of my family, including my mother, who you know loved you very much. You didn't even show up at any of your hearings. You just disappeared." There was nothing to say, Court. 15 years together and you couldn't even say cheater before you bailed? That Monday night, I walked up to our front porch and they handed me divorce papers before I could get through the door. And when I finally get inside, there isn't a single thing in the apartment that reminds me of you or our marriage. I see. You ruined our marriage in the blink of an eye with an incredibly selfish act, and I'm the bad guy. If that's all you have to say, just go away and leave me alone. Drew, I'm sorry. Just get out of here, Court, now! He was red with rage. Most of the restaurant was now looking at them. She stood up and tearfully walked away. At that moment, a whirlwind came over Drew. It was the Chatterbox twins and their little sister. They pounced on him at full speed, as usual. His wife was right behind them. She was laughing and smiling, but her smile quickly disappeared when she saw his face. Her gaze darted to the rapidly receding figure of Court, leaving the restaurant in the lobby. That was her, wasn't it, Drew? He only nodded his head as he was preoccupied with his 3 children. Without further ado, his wife Celia rushed after Court in a flash. Drew followed her movements with his eyes as she caught up with Courtney. They struck up a conversation that ended with Celia motioning for Court to sit down. They must have talked for 10 minutes or more. They seemed to exchange contact information, then Celia gave Court a hug and they parted ways. Celia went back to the table and took their youngest daughter from Drew so he would have a chance to handle the twins. Drew's eyes and mouth went wide when Celia sat back down. "She's coming to our house in a couple weeks and you two are going to talk. And I mean really talk, Drew. Don't say anything, just nod your head if you understand." Her tone didn't allow for any objections, so he just nodded and began to wrestle with the two little monsters in his lap that were now his life. Later that evening in the hotel room, well after the three musketeers had fallen asleep, Celia looked at him and asked, "Is there anything you want to say or ask her, baby?" He took a deep breath and spoke softly. "The first few years I wanted to, but apparently pride wouldn't let me, but now? No, I have nothing to say, and I'm glad I didn't give her the opportunity then." "What? You're joking? You can't be serious?" "I'm very serious, Celia. If I had let her talk to me then, maybe she would have said something that would have made me change my mind. But then I'd never have met you, and our three girls wouldn't exist. No, I don't need to talk to her, and I don't regret anything." She put her arms around her husband and covered him with kisses. "You know what to say to a girl, don't you, baby? But the poor woman needs to talk to you, so the least you can do is sit and listen." "I'll do that, but what's the point? All she'll do is tell me how sorry she is. If I ask why, she'll say she doesn't know, etc., etc., etc. But I'll do it for you, and maybe it will help her consummate the relationship. By the way, what is consummation?" "Drew, be kind. Maybe I can't give you a definition, but if you really loved her, would you yell at her a couple minutes after seeing her for the first time in 7 years? Maybe that's what the end of a relationship is all about. Maybe you're right. But even leaving you and the girls out of it, I knew even before I met you that my life was better off without her. The divorce made me reevaluate my life and what was important to me. Sure, I went through the usual emotional turmoil that most people experience when a marriage breaks up. But this failure made me take a second look at myself, something I never would have done if she hadn't acted stupidly." Drew paused to think and catch his breath. "They say that the greatest successes come after the greatest failures, and I firmly believe that in my case it's true. I am much happier practicing family law now than I ever was practicing tort law. Sometimes I feel like I am really helping people. I know I don't make as much money, drive a Boomer, or live in a lakeside apartment, but I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. What about her? Maybe you should ask her those questions." "What's the point, Celia? I have no regrets whatsoever about being where I am right now." He paused, a very sad expression on his face, and he continued in a voice that was barely audible. "I think that's not true. I do have one regret. I should have spoken to her mother. She's a very nice woman. I know she had a thing for me, and I liked her. When both my parents were gone, she was like a surrogate mother to me, and I left without saying a word to her." There was nothing more Celia could say. She had hoped that the conversation would do Drew as much good as Court, but now she doubted it was the right thing to do. Would she force Drew to do this? And it would only stir up a past he no longer cared about. But would she be able to stop it? As it turned out, Celia didn't have to do anything. The last meeting never happened. The night before Courtney was due in town, Celia's phone rang after midnight. She was always afraid to pick up the phone at that time for fear of bad news, but she answered it automatically. On the other line was a clearly distraught woman. "Celia? This is Angela Jones, Courtney's mother. I need to speak to Andrew." The ringing of a cell phone woke Drew, and Celia handed him the receiver. "It's for you." Drew picked up the phone. "Yes?" "Andrew, it's Angela. Courtney committed suicide yesterday afternoon." This statement was followed by the sobs of someone in such pain that it is impossible to describe. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what to say, oh God." It's my fault. Tears flowed from Drew, but there were no words. Celia, who had heard everything, had clung tightly to her husband and was now openly crying, thinking it was her fault too. Andrew, it's not your fault. She had a lot of problems, and she brought them on herself. There's a lot you don't know about her since the divorce. She left a sealed letter for you. I hid it from the police. No one knows it exists except you and me. What do you want me to do with it, honey? Just keep it to yourself for now and let me think about it. Can you do that for me? Sure, honey. Andrew, I need you to be with me. Can you come over? I'll be there as soon as I can, Mom. I'm going to bring my whole family with me. I want you to meet them. I know you'll like them. I'll call you back tomorrow and we'll make plans. Is anyone with you right now? You shouldn't be alone. Yes, honey. My friend Joyce is with me. I can't wait to meet your family. I'll talk to you tomorrow. And the phone disconnected. Epilogue. The private memorial service for Courtney was held 7 days later on a cold but clear fall afternoon, and as promised, Drew and his family attended. There were only a few family friends in attendance. Apparently, even though Courtney was a very competent attorney, she had no real friends. She was cremated, and the ashes will be scattered in the park where she and Drew often went when they were dating. Angela said it was the happiest time of Court's life. Losing her daughter by her own hand had been an almost unbearable burden for Angela. But she quickly grew to love Celia, and especially the 3 girls. By the end of the week, the girls were calling her Grandma Angie. Angela recounted what had happened in Court's life since Drew's departure. He was shocked by the revelations about the risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health issues that had followed the divorce. She even opened up about why Courtney ended up in the same hotel as Drew. She disappeared with 2 men she met at a nightclub and was gone for over a week. When she returned, she was covered in bruises. According to Angela, there was nothing unusual about that. She was also about to lose her partnership. He was stunned at how one bad decision, made at the worst possible time, had thrown Court's life out of control. It would be a long time before he came to terms with it. The night before Drew's family was to return home, he and Celia had a long talk and came to some decisions. The next morning, Drew took Angela aside while Celia kept the girls occupied. Mom, there are a few things we need to discuss. First, Celia and I would like you to come live with us. There's nothing keeping you here right now. You don't have to make a decision right away. But we'd like you to think about it carefully. We'd all love to have you with us. If you decide to come, we'll help you with your move every step of the way. We would also like to be with you when you scatter her ashes. Please think about it, okay? Oh, honey, that's so kind of you. I promise I'll think it over carefully. But I'm really going to miss her. And she was upset again. Drew put his arm around her to comfort her while she tried to come to her senses. When she calmed down, he continued. We need to talk about the letter. I think the best thing for us to do is to take the letter and throw it into the fireplace unopened. It's a letter to you, Andrew. I know, but I'm not going to read it at all. If you give it to me, I'll burn it. But I want to give you the opportunity to keep it. I don't know about you, but I want my memories of Court to be before the divorce. Your memories should be of that time, too, and I'm worried that after reading this letter, all we'll remember about her is what happened after the divorce. I want nothing to do with that damned letter. I'm giving it to you. If you decide to read it, the only thing I will ask is that you never, and I mean never, mention in front of me what it says. Angela was shocked by his answer, but began to understand Andrew's reasoning. She desperately wanted to remember her daughter as she had been before her actions that had destroyed her marriage. Maybe it was genuine remorse and an admission of how devastating her decision had been, but perhaps there was only more pain inside. Andrew told her about how the meeting with Court had gone a few weeks ago. What if Court had only gotten more angry and blamed Andrew? She wasn't in the best of moods, especially after confronting Andrew. Angela was torn. Before they headed home, Celia also had a private talk with Angela. Please, please, please move in with us. We would really like you to be a part of our family's life. I don't think you realize how important you are to Drew. I promise, honey. I'll think about it. It would be nice to be around young people again, Angela replied wistfully. As Drew and his family left for home along with tears and hugs, they asked Angela to go with them. After they left, Angela collapsed into a chair in the living room across from the fireplace. She pulled a letter out of her dress pocket and stared at it. She knew she had a decision to make. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.